Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 956 of the Juicebox Podcast. Jenny is back, and we're going to do another diabetes myth episode. Today's topic was sent in by listeners, and they say that people think that they have diet restrictions because they have type 1 diabetes. Jenny and I are going to talk all about it and read some listener feedback. While you're listening, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. Save 10% off your first month of therapy at betterhelp.com/juicebox. Get a free year's supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first order at drinkag1.com/juicebox. And you will, in fact, save 40% off of your entire order when you use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout at CozyEarth.com. I actually used that offer code the other day and bought myself some clothes. CozyEarth.com. If you're looking for the Bold Beginnings series, the Diabetes Pro Tip series, the Type 2 Pro Tip series, or any of those sorts of things, go to juiceboxpodcast.com, look up in the menu, or in the feature tab of the private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Omnipod 5. You can learn more and get started today at omnipod.com/juicebox. Doesn't matter if you prefer the Omnipod 5 or the Omnipod DASH, my link is the place to go. omnipod.com/juicebox. The podcast is sponsored today by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service and is 100% online. With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 25,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues. BetterHelp.com/juicebox. To get started, you just answer a few questions about your needs and preferences in therapy. That way, BetterHelp can match you with the right therapist from their network. And when you use my link, you'll save 10% on your first month of therapy. I was thinking that we could tackle the myth today that people with diabetes have diet restrictions.
Sure.
Seem fair? Okay.
That seems fair.
All right. So I'm going to just go right to the first piece of feedback.
Okay.
This person said, people tell me that type 1s can't eat certain things. And I have a couple of family members that tell me about my type 1 and how he can't have this and he can't have that. And, you know, maybe they should shy away from this. Like it's a lot of that verbiage is being used. Like, you know, so this person's trying to tell them, listen, my kid can eat food and here's how it gets handled. But people don't want to hear it. It seems to be the biggest problem. Next person says, everyone thinks I have to eat sugar-free everything. That everything I eat has to be diet, but a lot of that stuff tastes gross to me and I don't want to eat it. So even that is interesting, right? Like the person doesn't want to eat the thing, but they're getting so much pressure from someone that they've tried it. They now know that they don't like it, but they still feel the pressure.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So does this happen to you?
Let's see. Recently, no. But in the past it has. In the past it has. And I think we talked about this in one of the other myth episodes as well, is there's some old school thought to what's being told about what you can and can't, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have. I mean, years ago, the years after I was initially diagnosed, there were things that were just, I don't do them anymore, right? But there are also things that my family just didn't do either.
Okay.
So it wasn't my brother gets this, but Jenny doesn't get this. My parents were like, nope, it's going to be fair and clean. Everybody is just going to do it the way that Jenny does it, right? At holiday kind of types of gatherings with friends or family, my favorite aunt, actually, she would always make the vegetable tray, right? Because those at that time were considered free foods. Mm-hmm. And so Jenny could always have those items versus the other trays of things that were all of the cookies and treats and the bars and whatever, which did my parents let me have that occasionally? Sure. But they were definitely more of a not the greatest to have or indulge in or have 4 cookies at one gathering with friends just because I wanted them.
Right.
Could I have had them? Absolutely. At that time, though, we didn't have the knowledge of how to take care of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Today, we have the technology, we've got the information. And so I think we have to transfer that old school thought into today. We've got insulin that works faster. We've got technology. We've got a visual on our glucose levels. We've got machines and pumps and things that they leap over that yes and no food, and they allow people to absolutely eat what they want to eat.
Yeah, it allows a separation between what should I have nutritionally and what can I do without it impacting my diabetes poorly. Because,
right.
You know what I mean by that? Like the cookies,
yes.
Your cookies are a great example. None of us should be eating 4 and 5 cookies at an event.
No,
right?
No.
But and I think these things get blurred together sometimes. But if you're going to eat them and your blood sugar is going to go to 325 for 4 hours, well, then that seems like a more imminent, you shouldn't do this. I think that's the two things that get blended, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
and I think you brought up a good point there. Like nobody should eat 4 or 5 cookies at one time. You just shouldn't.
Right.
And so there's a whole nother avenue of a discussion that is a little different than this, but it kind of gets blended in because if all the kids or all the adults are doing something at a party or a gathering or a social event or at a business meeting or whatever, sure, you can follow suit, but in general, is it really good to do it all the time?
Yeah.
No, it's just not.
And you see where the resistance comes from the mother of a child, the father of a child, or the adult living with, because you don't want to be told what to do. Like that's the worst feeling in the world. Like you can't eat that as a statement or a direction. It has to be incredibly difficult to hear, right? And then you go, yes, I can. And either you think, yes, I can, because I know how to cover it with insulin, or you think, yes, I can. My blood sugar is going to go up and I don't care. Like, I'm not going to be stopped by this thing.
Right.
These things are, again, they're completely different. It's so interesting that you said about the plate of vegetables, because the next thing on the list says, I wish that people understood that candy is, I'm told all the time that candy is the root of all evil, but somehow fruit is okay. and so she gives an example. I'm not saying, by the way, you should eat candy over fruit. This is her bigger point. A family member that meant very well made a beautiful tray of fruit for a holiday party, brought it, put it down, and came over and said, hey, I made this because I know you can't eat the other stuff. You can't have desserts.
Right.
Meanwhile, the impact from a fruit tray or the impact from a piece of cake is probably the same, maybe worse if it's the fruit. Like, who knows, So again, nutrition and blood sugar, two different ideas. Are you better off eating a plate full of fruit? Sure you are, right? Then having a plate full of cake, nutritionally, of course, that makes sense. Blood sugar-wise, maybe no difference.
Maybe no difference. And or, maybe in fact, depending on the cake or the cookie or whatever it was with cream cheese frosting, maybe the cake actually doesn't hit you like the big plate of grapes and cherries that you are planning to eat instead, right?
Yeah, you might.
So it's a spike now versus a spike later. So, but they're absolutely, it's a great point. I mean, sugar is sugar. Sometimes there's more complex. Sometimes there's a little bit slower, something that mixes up how that sugar impacts your blood sugar.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, lovely that the person was like, hey, I brought the fruit for you. You're thinking that's great. I'm still going to have the cake.
I got you covered. Don't worry. I know about
Right.
I know all about your beaties. I'm on top of it for you. It's wonderful. I don't know. Oh, wait, here we go. Most recently, my father said to me, about my son, his blood sugar must be so well controlled because of the diet we eat. And the person said, it's not because of that at all. I know how to use insulin. And so, but that's not what the father sees. The father sees, oh, the kid's not spiking all over the place. It's got to be this food. Like, it's so interesting how people see ghosts in so many things. They think they see something. It's not really there. Now,
sure.
The other side of this would be, if you ate a very low carb existence and you had type 1 diabetes, you would require much less insulin. You'd have much less variability. And there is no doubt that from just that blood sugar perspective, things would be easier. Very likely, right?
Very likely. Yes, 100%. The majority of people who really are following a very low carb, or what a lot of people call a ketogenic diet, right? There is a lot of stability following that. And if you're doing it the right way, nutritionally speaking, you're not necessarily doing all of the fancy stuff that's on the market, but you're actually just eating clean food and getting in really low carb intake and high fat intake to complete your caloric need, right? You're going to get stability. You're probably going to get some weight modification. You're going to go down in insulin need, although your insulin needs will change in a different way. You'll learn insulin effect to work with that type of fueling plan.
Right.
In a very different way than covering for carbohydrates.
Yeah. I once had lunch with a type 1 who ate completely, like, no carbs, all meat. And 45 minutes later, they picked up their controller and gave themselves insulin to bolus for the protein and the fat rise that they knew was going to come. It was much less insulin, etc. I think, again, the problem comes when, this is a little different than the other thing, but in the diabetes community, amongst the group of people together who all have diabetes and have different experiences and have figured out different things. If you say, hey, I don't know how to, like, stop this spike. My kid went and had ice cream and this spike happened. You're going to get somebody who is very low carb, keto, something like that. And they're going to come in and say, oh, don't eat carbs. And that won't happen. And you're like, well, that's not helpful. Or
that's not what I want to do, right?
That's not the question I'm asking. Right.
That's not the question. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's, it's not a, hey, doc, it hurts when I do this. Don't do this anymore. Like, it's a decision you've made as a person eating that way, which I think is terrific. If anything you figure out that works for you is amazing, right. But you can't just show up at somebody's door and say, you can't eat carbs. That's the problem. You can eat carbs. Listen, I'm not going to bore you with it, but Arden's 24 hours. Arden's last 24 hours include a late night meal. I'm talking like 10 o'clock at night, rice, steamed carrots, and shrimp. Now, were there concessions made? It's basmati rice, not white rice. Like, sure, right?
Correct.
Right. And there's no breading on the shrimp. It wasn't fried. It was sauteed. Like, okay, right, those things. But I gave her a bowl. I mean, between the rice and the carrots, and there had to be 45 carbs in there, maybe, like more, maybe, who knows?
Must not have been a very big bowl, right?
It wasn't huge. It wasn't huge.
Okay.
It was a fair amount of rice, more carrots than rice, the shrimp, etc.
Okay.
Her blood sugar has not been under 70 or over 120 in the last 24 hours. So that it's doable. I saw her during the day have a little chocolate thing where she ate a bunch of those little Dove, like, dark chocolate hearts.
Sure.
Like, I don't know. Like, it's just, do people with diabetes have a diet restriction? Yes.
No.
But no.
No, and right. It's a little bit of both. Like, somebody actually asked, I think it definitely fits here. Somebody asked me not long ago, well, do you restrict yourself? No, but I also have certain preferences. I have many years of learning what I can do almost all the time, and I know it well enough to take care of it and handle it, right? And then there are the things that they're not the 80 to 90% of quality food that makes up from a fueling standpoint from what I want to put in my body because it needs good nutrients, right? Those are the foods that I don't restrict them, but when I do the non-typical foods, I tend to do them when I know I say get away with it. I don't mean it in that way, but it's kind of the way that it works out. Like if I've had a day that I've had just a lot of activity, or I've had a really good run or something like that, I have a sensitivity component that I can get away with. Now we're going to go out for like the dinner. Right.
Yeah. So, and you won't have to use a lot more insulin because you've got all that exercise on board that's going to help.
Correct. Right. So I'm not restricting. I guess I feel like I'm saving those types of things that I may want to do occasionally for times when I know that it's really going to work out to my advantage and that I've figured out how to work it in. I
feel like the word restricted stems from this idea that we should be able to just eat as much of anything that we want. It's like an American freedom idea. It's like, you're not going to stop me, right? I'm not going to make a pork chop for lunch. We're going to kill a whole pig. And, yes. that kind of thing, like abundance, like that whole, like bigger is better. I mean, honestly, you go to some restaurants and they give you food and I think, is this for all of us? But eventually you just eat it. You're like, okay, I'll eat this. And then that like clean your plate mentality comes into your head. It's interesting how in the 50s it was clean your plate, right? So that's how my parents were definitely raised that way. Like clean your plate. Mm-hmm. This food's expensive. I mean, if you grew up in my time and someone didn't tell you there was a child starving in Africa, so you had to eat all this food, like, I don't know, like that happened constantly.
Well, and there were commercials for it on television. So it wasn't just that you were hearing it, you were also seeing these poor children too.
How my parents knew they had television, right? Like, yes. So this was the way people spoke. So now we shift into a more kind of abundant lifestyle in more modern times, but we were raised with like, eat all that food. Like if I think back to the amount of food my mom gave me versus the amount of food a restaurant makes, and then I start making for ourselves, those are significantly different portions.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask comparatively, if you remember, what was the difference between what was put on your plate as an expectation, you will eat this, versus what we now have the ability to put on our plate. If you have access and enough to do it, it's probably at least double, if not maybe triple in some people's eyes.
My simple example is this. My mom would buy 5 pounds of potatoes and try to figure out a way to make them last until spuds started growing out of them. I open up a bag and I go, well, I'll just make these 5 pounds of potatoes. Like
yes.
There's four of us. Someone said they wanted mashed potatoes. Obviously, 5 pounds is the way to go. And
right, just cook the whole pot.
and then eventually they go into the refrigerator and people kind of pick at them throughout the week. I'm not saying we eat 5 pounds at a sitting, but I do think you put more on the plate because it feels like generosity. Yeah. It almost feels like love. Like, here, have a bunch, like that kind of thing. And so I think that, again, these things get blended together, and that's where these conversations end up coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I didn't realize, Jenny, that the Myth series was going to be more about psychology when we started it, by the way, but it's been fun so far.
It has, yes. And I think that's another piece that, as you talk about portion, I think it's a really big missing piece in education overall. It really is. Nobody these days gets educated about a real portion of meat or a real portion of vegetables, or what a portion of fruit should look like, or like your potatoes. Like half your plate shouldn't be potatoes.
Yeah.
I don't care if you like them. Half your plate doesn't need to be potatoes with 3 sticks of butter on it. Mm-hmm. So it's not necessary.
I just recorded with Jake Leach yesterday from Dexcom, and he discussed how they're going to present a sensor next year that's going to be for people with type 2 who don't use insulin. And which is terrific, right? And I immediately talked about how, Arden moved from G7 from G6, and we had 2 sensors left and a transmitter. So I put it on my brother who has type 2 diabetes. And in 10 days, the light bulbs that turned on for him that hadn't been turned on in years of doctors yelling at him, you don't eat right, like, blah, 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 you're not trying hard enough, like all that stuff. He suddenly was like, oh, I see what happens now when I eat these foods. And it just so quick, it turned the light on for him. But people don't know about food. Like, it's just, and so this is it. This is exactly what happens here. You get diagnosed, somebody tells you can't do a thing. You brusque against that because you don't want to be told what to do. Somebody else who has no idea what they're talking about says something to you like, let me read a quote here. Oh, I didn't know she could eat that. Or when this woman says her coworkers brought snacks, passed them out to everybody, skipped her.
Except, oh no. Well, that's just rude.
As she cruised by, I'm picturing a cubicle, said, I know you can't have this, and rolled right past her. Right? So, or even when somebody here says they're trying to stop a low blood sugar with a pack of Smarties, and during the low blood sugar incident, someone, a loved one, looks at them and goes, do you really think you should eat all of them? You have diabetes. So when those things get blended together with just the misunderstanding about food to begin with, and this generational inclination to eat more, give more, it's what led me to say, when you and I did an episode about like Ozempic and things like that, we did like a type 2, as part of the type 2 series. I had this kind of like whimsical idea while we were talking that I've not let go of yet, which was if you injected everyone right now with this stuff and took their hunger away, that in one generation, a whole new group of children would not eat as much food because you would teach them to eat less by example. So,
absolutely.
Not saying we should like put it in the water or anything like that, but like, you know, it's not wrong. Like if everyone's parents used less food, more nutrition, it would literally take a generation for that to flip-flop around.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I saw it just recently because my son's been gone for 7 months. He's been living on his own. He flew back to spend a couple of days around my birthday, and he had a couple of days off from work. And while he's off on his own, he's cooking for himself, pre-making his meals. He's trying to be very conscious about money, but also he realizes he's not as active as he used to be, like all that stuff. And he came home and he started eating more like he was a kid than the adult that he is off on his own. I noticed it in a couple of days. So,
because mom and dad's house has more.
There's more crap here because we have more money because we make more money than he does. And so there's extra stuff here. And he's like, oh, I haven't had these in a while, which was, I didn't want to pay for these. But then his stomach started hurting. And I was like, yeah, you're eating better on your own because you're eating less food. It's for you, it's because you don't have as much money, but who cares why? Right. The truth is he's making clean meals for himself. And I don't know. It's all so freaking obvious.
And the interesting thing is that he has learned that almost on his own. Yeah. It's not like you gave him a big sit down lecture before he left the house to be like, you know what, you really have to think about all, and maybe you did, maybe you talked about some things in terms of budgeting, or he just saw that while he was growing up or whatever, but he's kind of taken this on his own, which is, it's really adult. Like, good for him. That's fantastic.
I'm excited for him. The extent of what, I mean, listen, we're careful with money in our house, and that stems from me, you know, while we're talking about where everything comes from. I grew up broke. It's not hard to figure out, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but on the food side, I've told them throughout their life growing up, when they were old enough to understand, I grew up like a monster with food. Like everyone, for the most part, did. Unless you had a nice granola mom like Jenny, who's like, was going to be like, hey, I'll grow some stuff in the backyard. Like the rest of us grew up eating like Kentucky Fried Chicken and drinking orange drink and thinking it was juice, and thinking juice was good for you, et cetera, and so on. And like, so I figured it out as I became a young adult. The Omnipod 5 is the first and only tubeless automated insulin delivery system to integrate with the Dexcom G6. And Omnipod 5 is available for people with type 1 diabetes ages 2 years and older. It has smart adjust technology, and that means that your pod will adjust insulin delivery based on your customized target glucose, helping to protect you against highs and lows, both day and night. Just like the Omnipod DASH, Omnipod 5 includes a waterproof, tubeless insulin pod that can be worn almost anywhere you've given yourself an injection. Each pod eliminates the need for multiple daily injections, plus the automated insulin delivery and CGM integration helps simplify life in so many ways. Omnipod.com/juicebox. Once you get there, scroll down a little bit. You can click on the Check My Coverage button or the Let's Go button. What does let's go mean? It says, I'd like a free trial of Omnipod. Take the pod for a test drive. Let's go. I just clicked on let's go just now. Let's see what happens. Oh, it asks you, are you living with diabetes or the caregiver of someone with diabetes? Explains a bunch of stuff to you. All right, let's just say I'm the caregiver because I am. Asks how old my kid is. Older than 2 because Arden's going to be 19 in a couple of days. She's type 1. It also asks, are you type 2 requiring insulin or other or unsure? I say type 1. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, we have a match. For your loved one who is living with type 1 diabetes, the Omnipod 5 automated insulin delivery system is the best fit. Did you know Omnipod 5 integrates with the Dexcom G6? Your next steps. Gives you next steps. Fill out your personal details below. Locate doctor on the next page. Okay, there's a lot more. I'm not going to read you the whole internet, but omnipod.com/juicebox. You can either get more information, get started, ask for a free trial, or see a beautiful picture of me. Although it doesn't really look like me anymore because I'm now even prettier. Omnipod.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes. Links at juiceboxpodcast.com. If you can't remember, omnipod.com/juicebox. All right, let's get back to Jenny and those pesky myths. And I did my best to change the course of the ship, but it wasn't that easy. So,
sure.
So I would tell them along the way, we've done our best to give you a better view of food, but the truth is you do not have a completely correct view of it. Like, it's better than what I had, and I'm moving in that direction again. And they took that seriously. So, right. I got lucky there, basically.
Yeah. I know. I mean, we've tried to do the same, with our kids. We have a garden. We teach them where food comes from. We've taken them to farms. They know what a chicken looks like. They know what a cow looks like. They know where food comes from. And a lot of people just don't have the opportunity or understand that that's an important thing to teach. I mean, we teach portion. Like, my kids know how to read a food label. Not many kids their age without diabetes know how to read a food label,
100%.
So, these are, again, they're things that aren't being taught, and we need to remember to teach them. I would say that people with diabetes are probably a step ahead in terms of understanding compared to the general public, which isn't a bad thing.
Yeah. So that's my public service announcement. You should eat better. You should eat whole foods and limit sugar intake and you shouldn't, your day shouldn't be 600 carbs or something like that. Like all that's aside. Now, having said all that, if you can't accomplish that for some reason, the answer isn't give away your diabetes health on top of it.
Right.
That's it. So maybe you'll get the eating thing together and you'll figure it out. But in the meantime, we don't just go, oh, sugar makes my blood sugar go up and I don't do anything about it and I can't stop eating ice cream, so I guess I'm going to die. Like that's what at the core of what I think this podcast is about. I think it's about taking the correct amount of insulin for what you're eating.
Correct. That goes right along with not having to think about the word restriction.
Right.
It's learning how to use this medication that we have to have in order for the food that we choose to put in to actually work well and keep our body healthy long term.
Yeah. I choose to take a bigger holistic view of the whole thing. I think that it's obvious where we all are as a society. I don't think that you just change that with a light switch because someone told you have type 2 or type 1 diabetes.
True.
So we're going to take care of our health, learn how to manage that, and then hopefully over time you will come to a better understanding about your food. And if you don't, at least your blood sugars have been under control the whole time. By the way, at least.
Correct.
It's amazing,
Right.
That's always been my perspective. Like, if I step back a little bit from like two people having a conversation and talk to you like the person who makes the podcast, it was my expectation that you can't make everyone do the right thing. So they should have as many tools as they have to apply to whatever their thing is.
Correct.
Yeah. And I don't have any trouble with it. Like, to say that, I don't want people to hear that and go, oh, he says bolus for whatever, but he's at home eating quinoa. I've never had quinoa in my life. I couldn't identify it. And I had 3 chocolate chip cookies last weekend. So
there you go.
I ain't arguing with you. You know what I mean? Like, but what happens again, like, Jenny, our pediatrician diagnosed us, and the first thing I thought is, I can't bake anymore. I love baking. Like, so that's how that hit a person who didn't know anything about diabetes 5 minutes before. People think I have to bring or drink something special because they don't provide drinks for me when I come to family gatherings. This is a big one, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Diet drinks. There's a divide in the world. There's people who don't worry about their blood sugar, who say, I don't eat that aspartame. It makes mice go crazy, or whatever they say. And then there's people like, I can't have a drink with sugar and it'll make my blood sugar go up to 400. That one happens constantly, doesn't it?
It does happen. And I'm in a different sort of lane altogether. I don't expect somebody to have something for me for a beverage. I always bring my beverage along. Mm-hmm. If I want something outside of water, which these days most people have bottled water or something available for people to drink, great. I'll have that. If not, I will bring my own stuff along. Right. That I know what's in it. I know that it's not, whatever color such and such that's going to turn my eyeballs green.
Well, Jenny, now that I jacked up on the Wegovy, I'm bringing my own drinks places too. Not that I would never drink a sugary drink. Like, it just was beyond like I can't even tell you what it tastes like if I drink something like that.
Did you grow up with sugary drinks or did you not? Because I also don't prefer sugary or sweetie types of drinks, but we didn't grow up.
Oh, we did.
Even before I was diagnosed, it was not in the house because it was either milk or water. That was what we had.
We drank cut rate soda. So whatever, like do you remember did everyone have a grocery store that the bags didn't have printing on it, so they were cheaper and the labels were all white? It was like poor people grocery store. You might not have had one. I had one. And that's where we used to go. So like off-brand soda, juice, like in, giant tubs of sugary crystals that you dissolved in water. Like, that's all we drank. But as I got older, I was like, that's stupid. I'm not going to do that. And, sure. And so I changed that. I think I went to diet soda first. And then I lost my flavor for it. Like, now I can't, like, I was in a restaurant in Atlanta visiting with my son, and they had Mexican Coke. So like real cane sugar Coca-Cola. And I was like, give me one of those, please. I would like to try that. It was like a 12-ounce bottle. I was halfway through it. I'm assuming that's what meth feels like.
You were like, woo!
Holy hell. I was like, I can't keep doing this. So I stopped. I was like, does anyone else want to try this? I can't completely drink this. It felt odd on my stomach. It felt weird in my head. It tasted horrible, like as far as I could tell. But no, I grew up with it. I just changed my palate on that one.
Yeah.
So
I think the last sip of like real soda I actually had was we went on a trip to Peru with some friends who were Peruvian, and they insisted we had to try this like neon yellow soda from the bodega down the street. And I was like, okay, like there's no label on it. This is a total like swig of sugar. Like, whatever. I guess I'll see what happens.
I don't even know where this came from.
I don't know what the flavor was. I have nothing to compare it to, but I could not believe that this was it was the beverage.
Yeah.
It was like the thing to drink.
You know what also changed my palate is that I grew up with like legit sugar. Like, my example here is if you eat Fruity Pebbles or Apple Jacks, if you're a person who's doing that right now in real time, you are eating a terrible version of Fruity Pebbles and Apple Jacks because they were so much better in the 80s. And I don't know why. I have no idea why. But they changed the food that I grew up with. And so I was like, I don't even like this anymore. And
it's not good anymore.
Yeah, it got me away from it too. I can't tell you how many here are just like my son. They tell me my son can't have cake. My daughter has dietary restrictions. This goes on and on. Here's one though. I hate that people think my child cannot eat sugary foods or junk foods even because he has type 1, or that his diet somehow caused his type 1. A teaching assistant at school tried to deny my 8-year-old non-type 1 son ice cream because his brother has diabetes. So that lady turned to the sibling and went, you people are prone. You're prone to this. You can't have no ice cream. Like that's, isn't that something?
I also what I'm astounded about in this whole line of like discussion is how somebody who has not lived it is taking it upon themselves to make a decision for somebody who clearly is living with it. Mm-hmm. Right? Like where do you get off? I'm so sorry. Like do not make my decisions for me. If I want to down those 5 cookies, I'm going to down the 5 cookies and I'm going to figure it out and take care of it. And it's not on you. So don't worry about me, please.
This might be a dangerous part of the conversation for me, but I'm fascinated by all the things people think they're qualified to do sometimes. Like,
yes.
Your life is a dumpster fire. This you're sure about? Like, fascinating. Absolutely fascinating to me. I don't know. That's a different conversation. That's a conversation Jenny and I will have in private when we see each other, not here on the podcast, maybe. Let's see. People brought meals to our house after my daughter was diagnosed and asked or told us they didn't bring desserts because they didn't want her to get worse. There you go. Oh. Or to keep having diabetes. That was another thing they got. I understand their intentions were pure, but I just kept saying, she can eat anything. Diabetes isn't going to go away. It's a lifelong autoimmune condition, and sometimes sugar saves her life even. She said the looks that she got made her feel like they were looking at her like she didn't know what she was talking about. So same thing. And she throws in something else here that has nothing to do with this topic, so I'm going to jump over. What I'm getting is that people hear constantly, you're diabetic, blah, blah, blah. But here's one. An endo asked them. I was once asked by an endo, should you be eating that? Like, not their endo. An endo in a social setting.
Wow.
So what are you going to do there? I don't know.
Maybe that was an endo who clearly doesn't see a lot of people with diabetes in their practice. Maybe they focus on like hormone regulation, or I don't know. I'm trying to give them some reason for being silly in what they said to that person.
You want a funny one?
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine told me I shouldn't eat onions because they're just pure sugar. I think that goes back to your other statement of like, how do people talk about things that they don't know about?
Right.
That's it. He needs more fruit, not vegetables. Oh my gosh, there's so many things here. Way back, a school principal asked my mom if she could wean me off of the snacks. That's a quote. Wean me off of the snacks. And she's saying these were the snacks I used to bring my blood sugars back up when they got low.
I'm curious how, and it probably isn't in the post, but like that sounds almost like when I was younger in school, I did have snack times that were very specific because of the type of insulin I had and the way that it worked. Mm-hmm. So they were timed. And it almost sounds like this person has had diabetes a long time and remembers that being asked without the understanding that there was probably something in effect there that the snacks were necessary for, not necessarily just for low blood sugars, but maybe that was just the way that it was because that was the way her insulin was working, right? And again, weaning you off, like, when are we going to get to the point that you don't have to send the snacks to school with your child? Well, when the pancreas starts making some more insulin.
Or are they thinking, well, the snacks are the problem? Like one or the other, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm going to skip through the your feet will fall off comments. There are a lot of them. But here's the one. I was once treating my low blood sugar with Smarties. My husband's grandpa regaled me with a story about how his mother's feet at age 90 she lost a toe, and he said, you shouldn't eat that. That's how my mom lost a toe. So, by the way, that might be how his mom lost a toe. like maybe she had untreated type 2 diabetes for most of her life. And like, I have no idea. By the way, at 90, if the worst thing that happens to me at 90 is someone takes one of my toes, I'm going to be like, I'm killing it here. But
right. I didn't need it anyway.
But no kidding though, Jenny. I'm scrolling past a page of comments about people who have been told about
feet.
Their feet. Yes. People who love to say, "Oh, that's diabetes on a plate," or "That's diabetes in a cup." That sort of thing. She says, "I hate that, and I hate it when comedians use it as a joke." This one's interesting. My family was shocked when I explained to them that we actually have more juice and candy in the house now that my child has diabetes than we did before they did.
Mm-hmm.
And this one's interesting. This person was told that you can't do intermittent fasting as a type 1. I'm going to tell you right now.
That's not true.
That is definitely not true.
No.
Arden's on an algorithm. So in fairness, like there's a thing trying to stop her from getting low. But it's very successful. And she is definitely a person who eats in a window. Like I would bet that in a 24-hour period, Arden probably only eats for 8 or 10 hours of that. And she's not running around low constantly.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. That is the end of the diabetes myth for that we have diet restrictions. Do you have anything to add to it?
I don't think so. Not about the diet restriction stuff. Do we have more myths to do, though? Do we have more?
Oh, my God, yeah.
We do, don't we? I was going to we had 52 pages. There have to be more.
Complications are inevitable.
Okay.
That there is a cure. That there are strict rules to follow, like strict do's and don'ts. An insulin pump will fix everything. These are all episodes you will still hear coming in this.
Awesome.
That you have the bad type of diabetes. Type 1s can't be overweight. Type 2s are definitely overweight. Type 2 can become type 1, vice versa. Wow, you should see. Oh, this isn't a myth. This is just people who don't understand. Insulin is what you get when your blood sugar is low.
Oh, yes.
Insulin pumps are bad for diabetics.
Huh.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. How about that you're doing drugs?
Well, yeah. That's a funny one. It is and it isn't. I can understand from one perspective that clearly it looks very weird from one angle to some outsider who just doesn't know. My friends, I did not have a pump until I got married. So I was MDI for a very long time. And all of my friends, they loved saying, "Oh, Jenny's got to shoot up. It's time to eat." Like they thought it was hilarious. And I did as well. I was not bothered by that. I let a lot of things just sort of roll. I'm like, that doesn't hurt me. Yeah. So whatever. It's kind of funny. So
listen, it's one of all this falls under that category to some, if you think it's funny, it's funny. Like
right.
Arden does not care if you joke about diabetes.
Yeah. Nice.
She goes so far as to say, I don't understand why people are upset by that. So it's just her personality. It doesn't bother her. But there are plenty of people in this document who are like, comedians that make jokes of diabetes infuriate me. So it's just it's personality. That's all. All right. Well, Jenny, I appreciate you doing this with me. Thank you very much.
Of course. It was fun.
Hey, isn't it nice to have Jenny back? Thank you so much, Jenny. If you'd like to, you can hire Jenny. She works at integrateddiabetes.com. Thanks so much to Omnipod for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Don't forget, omnipod.com/juicebox. Get started today with the Omnipod 5 or the Omnipod DASH and everything. Check your eligibility, take a test drive. It's all there. Omnipod.com/juicebox. If you're looking for community, check out the Juicebox Podcast private Facebook group, which now has 40,000 members in it and adding more every day. Check it out. There is something there for you. Juicebox Podcast, type 1 diabetes. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Hey, everybody. BetterHelp is a sponsor of the podcast, and they're offering my listeners 10% off their first month of therapy. It's a great deal. I hope you can check it out. BetterHelp.com/juicebox. Now, BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service that is 100% online. They have over 25,000 licensed and experienced therapists. They can help you with a wide range of issues. All you have to do to get started is hit my link, answer a few questions about your needs and preferences in therapy, and that way BetterHelp will be able to match you with the right therapist from their network. BetterHelp.com/juicebox. You're going to get the same professionalism and quality as you expect from in-office therapy. And if for any reason your therapist isn't right for you, you can switch to a new one at no additional charge. Do therapy on your terms. Text, chat, phone, video call, and you can even message your therapist at any time and then schedule a live session when it's more convenient. So if you're looking for someone to talk to, check out BetterHelp.